Welcome to the Streets.mn podcast, the show where we highlight how transportation and land use can make our communities better places. Coming to you from beautiful uptown Minneapolis, Minnesota, I am your host, Ian R. Buck. One of the coolest new things in the Minneapolis bike scene is a cargo bike lending library, a partnership between the Lyndale Neighborhood Association and the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. Our producer, Stina Neel, jumped at the chance to report this very cool story from her neighborhood, so let me hand you off to her.
So Laura, we're talking about the Minneapolis Cargo Bike Library. That's the official name right now?
It is.
Yes. Can you give us a little intro for you and your relationship to all things bikes?
Oh, that is a big question. So it actually started in 2014. I heard about 30 Days of Biking. I lived in Denver at the time, and back then I just took my bike around every once in a while for random, recreational opportunities or to go play tennis or whatever. But I saw it online and thought, wow, that seems like a fun challenge. I rode my bike every day in April, found out that there were way more situations where I could and wanted to use a bike for transportation, for exercise, for fun. And then I was just hooked from there. And so I have been a bike commuter since about 2014. And that's a pretty deep rabbit hole once you start riding a bike on streets and realize how much is wrong and not set up to support folks who are walking, biking, and rolling. And so a few years into my bike commuting journey, I started getting into advocacy. I was on the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Committee in Denver. And then once my family moved here to Minneapolis in 2019, we have so many opportunities to advocate. And so I got involved as a volunteer with Our Streets, and I've been on the board as the board president for the last 2.5 years and do lots of other volunteer work and show up at group rides. I run a couple Safe Routes to School grants at my kids' school and just really work to support people having the freedom and safety and comfort to be able to walk, bike, and roll.
And so, bit of a personal question. Is your family car-free, car-light?
We have one car. When we moved to Minneapolis, we had 2 cars and quickly realized after the second car kept having a dead battery because we were using it so not often that we had an opportunity to get a nice cargo bike by selling our second car.
Yeah.
And so we did that, sold the second car, bought a cargo bike back in 2021. And my wife and I both work from home, so we don't actually have work commutes, and the kids' school is in our neighborhood. So a lot of our life is very close by and very easy to just walk. But when we need to go do things a little bit further away or have loads that we need to carry, we take our cargo bikes.
Nice. I am someone who just very, very recently became car-free, like within the last 3 weeks.
That's huge.
So I am very excited to learn more about the Cargo Bike Library and opportunities for folks who are choosing not to drive or don't drive for any reason. So in your words, what is the Minneapolis Cargo Bike Library?
It is a community partnership that is intended to expand access to cargo bikes in Minneapolis. So it's something that I've been working to create for a very long time, and it's taken lots of different iterations, trying to solve lots of different problems. But at the core, it's really about just getting bikes in the hands of people. One of the unique ways that we do this is that our rentals are about a week long. And so folks actually have an opportunity to integrate the bike into their day-to-day lives, which is a little bit different from like if you're renting a Lime bike share bike or those sorts of things where it's on a short-term basis. And so the Cargo Bike Library is more long-term rentals, at least right now.
Do you think this is kind of like is it like the gateway drug into
Yes.
into cargo
Yes.
bike life?
And we've worked to make the barriers to entry as low as possible. One of those is it is free to borrow a bike from the library. That's why we chose to use the word library. And so I've been really excited to see how many people have been able to opt in who have been maybe a little bit like cargo bike curious. And we actually, one thing that is unique about our program, and we'll talk about the partnerships in a bit, is that we actually have an orientation that's required for folks to be able to get access to the bikes. And we partner with Bike MN on that and use their curriculum and their handbook to ensure that the folks who are renting bikes from us are equipped with basic like safety on how to ride a bike safely in the street, how to check a bike for maintenance needs, all those basic components. And it's been really cool to see how many people have benefited from that orientation, and then also how many people have started to like see the opportunity to use bikes in their day-to-day life. I got emails from 2 people who had signed up for registrations to attend the orientation who canceled the orientation because they had gotten a cargo bike while they were waiting.
Oh.
And so I think that there's a lot of curiosity and interest out there, and some people just need to see it out there and be reminded, hey, this is something that's possible. Maybe I'm ready to buy my own bike, or maybe it's someone who doesn't have the resources or doesn't want to have a cargo bike themselves, but they can still get access to that through our library.
Nice. Who is the Minneapolis Cargo Bike Library team? Because there's you, there's partnerships. Who are they?
Yes. So it started, this was not my idea. I stole this idea from other folks. I had seen examples of libraries like ours in Boston and Vermont. I think there's one in Omaha now. And so I had this initial idea and originally wanted to start it with just my family's bikes out of our garage. And my wife was very smart and vetoed that idea because she was like, what are you going to do if they break? What if they get stolen? What are the liability concerns? And so that set me on the path of trying to figure out how I could put a few guardrails and safety things in place to help ensure that this program was successful and not as much of a potential liability risk for me as an individual. So I was super lucky to be able to connect with my friends at the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota, aka Bike Men. So they are a huge partner in this. We also partner with Cycle Hoop, which got us the bike hanger, which is like a bike shed that the bikes are actually stored in. Then we needed a place for that bike hanger. I was hopeful that with the Minneapolis secure bike parking pilot that we would be able to store it in the street, but the city has been taking a while to figure out the permitting process of parking these things in the street. And so I had to find some private property that we could store it on. And I happen to live very, very close to the Lyndale Neighborhood Association building, and they have a small parking area in the alley. And so I approached them to see if they'd be willing to give us a car parking space to put the bikes, and then also to get the word out to the Lyndale community about the resource. And so Bike Men, Cycle Hoop, and Lyndale Neighborhood Association, plus me, are the core partners. And then since we've launched, we've also gotten some support from folks at Bunch Bikes and Electric.
So the process of going from inspiration from other communities to talking with Bike Men, how long did that process take?
So it was actually a very twisty-turny process, because when I originally had the idea, once my wife had vetoed doing this out of our own garage, I was like, okay, maybe I'll just solve the secure parking issue, because I had a number of neighbors who talked about once they saw our cargo bike, they wanted to get their own, but they lived in apartments or duplexes or just had homes that didn't have secure places for them to park a bike, like a garage. And so I wanted to solve the parking issue. So I first approached Cycle Hoop, I think this was 2 years ago, and started the partnership between like Cycle Hoop and LNA to try to figure out what was possible as far as secure parking, but we weren't really able to figure out a way to make that work financially to cover things. And so then I think it was last fall that I approached Bike Men with the idea of, rather than just trying to find secure parking, what if we fill it with something that is a valuable community resource? And so I approached Bike Men last fall. We did a lot of planning through the fall, winter, and then launched on April 1st.
Mm-hmm. So as of today, it is officially 1 month.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, exactly.
It is exactly 1 month.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Cargo Bike Library. So it is considered a pilot program.
Yes.
So what does that mean in terms of timeline? And then what are some goals? And we can also talk to Bike Men about like on their side, what are goals and numbers and things that need to be shown.
Yeah. I think it'd be great for you to talk to the Bike Men team as well, because they were so fantastic to be able to add this on to an existing grant that they have through the Met Council focused on their e-bike commuter program. So this is a different angle than what they do with their e-bike commuter program, but same idea of like, how can you get bikes in people's hands and support them to replace car trips with bike trips and lower the barrier to entry with having freely available bikes that they help maintain. And so I think that was a huge piece of things. And the pilot is really that the grant that we are doing this under, it ends at the end of this year. And so the plan is we launched on April 1st. We will probably close down in as late of fall as we can lean into. Probably not going to go towards the winter. And then if we're able to get more grant funding through the Met Council or through another source, then the hope is that we can continue into 2026 and potentially even expand into more locations, get more bikes. But yeah, just for this year, it's essentially April 1st through late fall. And we didn't set super specific goals on like number of trips. We had honestly no idea what to expect, especially once we put in place the requirement for the orientation. I honestly was a little bit worried that people weren't going to want to give up an hour. It's an hour-long orientation. I was like, people aren't going to want to give up an hour of their time, oftentimes on weekends, just to get access to these bikes. I was wrong. All of our orientations filled up as soon as I started sharing about them. And now I'm in this tricky position of, we started the program with 3 bikes. We're just now a month in, and now we have 5 bikes. I'm the only one right now managing the check-in, check-out process and communicating with people who rent the bikes. And so far, I've been able to put in some pretty good processes for that, but it is a time. It takes time, and I'm doing this as a volunteer. And we don't have more locations. We have offers from some bike companies to get us more bikes, but we don't have space to put the bikes, and I'm worried that I don't want to overload myself as a volunteer managing too many bikes. And so I think there is huge demand, huge potential and support from the bike industry, because I think they see the opportunity here. Obviously, our goal is not to sell cargo bikes, but there's an obvious connection here that once folks get an opportunity to try a bike, some of them are going to decide to get one themselves.
This is like the best problem to have, isn't it?
It is. It is the absolute best problem to have, but it also breaks my heart to have to tell people, like, I know you're excited about this program, and I am too, but I don't have space for you right now.
Right.
And I don't have enough bikes. And so we're in the situation right now where we have currently onboarded 30 people through our orientation. I call them Minneapolis Cargo Bike Library members. You're a member if you've been through the orientation. Again, no cost or anything, but just you've been trained up. So we have 30 folks right now. We have another 25 who will be oriented in May. And if you do the math, with 5 bikes, not all of them are in the same demand. There's a couple that are in much higher demand than others. I actually can't onboard that many more people, because with 1 week rentals for each bike, we might already be booked through the fall.
Right. Are you only doing 1 week rentals, or do some folks only want for a weekend or something?
Some people do, but to protect my own ability to not have to do check-in, check-out every single day on top of my full-time job and family and all the things. Right now, I'm regimenting it to checkout is Saturday afternoons, and then they check the bike back in Thursday nights. So I have 2 more bikes that are coming back in tonight.
Oh my gosh.
And both days are so fun for me, like to be able, I call myself a bike librarian now, and to be able to like greet folks and say, here's your bike, off you go to have adventures for a week is so fun. And to be able to walk them through, a lot of people will have questions on like, where's the throttle? How do I do this? And so I can get them set up to hopefully have a successful time with some of the knowledge about how the bike actually works. And then when they bring it back, they often have so many stories to tell me about what happened while they rented the bike. The second week of our program, the person who was the second person to rent our Aventon Abound happened to see the person who rented it the first week. They saw each other, I think, at Dairy Queen or something. And the first renter was like, oh, I just had that bike last week. And they were able to hang out and connect. And I felt like that was a very Minneapolis story.
So you said you have 5 bikes. And I did do some peeking. You have 4 are electric, and 1 is an acoustic longtail.
Yep.
Is acoustic your preferred way to say non-electric bike?
I don't know, like non-bike people, if they understand what that means. So sometimes I'll say acoustic, sometimes I'll say non-electric. Sometimes
I say analog.
Human-powered, yeah.
Well, I like human-powered. That's fun.
But the electric bikes are human-powered too. It's just they're helped by the motors, so.
Non-assisted bikes.
Yes.
And then, so 1 is an electric trike. That's the newest.
Technically, the electric trike, which is an upright 1-person. We're kind of bending the rules a little bit. I don't know if you can count that one as a cargo bike, but we got it donated, and it's an awesome bike and really good for folks who have like balance or mobility needs. Yeah. So that one technically is the newest, but then we got the bunch trike right before that. So it was just a month of trikes.
Yes. So you have the long tail. You have the bunch bike, which is that kind of bucket style.
Yep.
And that one can hold
400 pounds in the
cargo
cargo area.
That's like a couple of friends.
It is. My wife and I actually just took, our family has a bunch bike too, and right now the cargo bike trike is between rentals. I'm actually going to bring it to an event this weekend. The Lindale Neighborhood Association has a walk bike and roll event, and we'll have the bunch bike there to show folks. So it's not rented right now. So my wife and I actually took it last night on a date and saw Regina on Bryant, saw a friend on Bryant Avenue, and I was in the front on the way to our date, and then my wife was in the front on the way home.
Oh my gosh. We borrowed a friend's Urban Arrow, and I've been in the front of that, and I've had Ian in the front of it, and that's the best way to go to a date. It's full of giggles. It's very fun.
On our way home, a driver shouted out the window at us that we were living the best life. I thought that was very accurate.
Yes.
And we've taken, like for school pickup, I've put my mom in the front of the trike, and then both kids fit in there too. So like you can mix and match. Dogs can go in the front. We have that one set up to be able to have a dog in it. Has a mat on the ground that's good for like not scratching up the bike, and then it has a leash that the dog can be attached to within the bike. So lots of use cases.
I've talked to some folks who are enjoying like late retirement age, right? They're in their golden years, and they are like, oh, I can't ride a bike anymore. And I keep thinking about how wonderful the bucket bikes are for having a seat in there, and you get the experience of flying down the hills and having so much fun on a bike, even if you're at a stage in life where you're not in pedaling mode.
Yep. And that the bunch bike in particular is that company does a lot of work to try to make sure that folks know how that bike can be used for accessibility needs. And so like young kids with accessibility needs, older folks with accessibility needs, folks with dogs. I had a veteran who had some disabilities who test rode a bike, one of the bunch bikes, last weekend, who has 2 service dogs. And she put her 2 service dogs in the front of the bike and just said that she was super excited to be able to take them out on adventures. And then I have another person who reached out to me and wants to rent the bunch bike to help their adult friend who has a chronic illness and oftentimes is like has fatigue and is not able to ride a bike on their own. This friend wants to take their friend in the bunch bike and take them around onto all of the, you know, beautiful bike paths and places that cars can't go, that this friend hasn't been able to see since they've had these things come up physically.
So quick side note, where do the bikes come from? Is this something that is where they purchased, donated? I know Bike MN, that's where those Aventins came from.
Yep. Yeah, so it's very mix and match. Bike MN bought our first 2 electric cargo bikes, both of the Aventin Abounds. We have an Abound and then an Abound SR, which is a slightly smaller one. One is set up to haul kids, the other is set up to just haul cargo. And then I had that Kona non-assisted, or whatever we want to call it, bike donated to me, actually through some friends at Bicycle. Someone just had the bike and didn't need it anymore and was looking to give it a new home. So we started just with those 3 bikes, and then the bunch bike is technically on loan to us from Bunch, and then the electric trike was fully donated to Bike MN for this program.
Ooh. So the orientation, folks sign up ahead of time. They're offered twice a month, once a month.
Well, I was trying to offer way more, but now I have to slow down because of the weeks. But yeah, they originally were offered once a month. And
so at that, it's 1 hour. And you learn how to safely operate and lock. What other things do you learn during orientation?
So the Bike Men team has this fantastic handbook of biking around Minnesota, and it has everything you need to know about staying safe while biking. So what different types of infrastructure look like, what your lane position should be, like where in the lane you should be, which lane you should be in when you're turning, how to do hand signals, how to fit a helmet on your head securely, how to lock up the bike, as you mentioned, and then the basic like ABC quick check that we want folks do not need to be bike mechanics to rent these bikes. I check them over every time they come in and before they go out again. And if anything comes up, the Bike MN team helps us fix anything. So that is not on our renters to be able to fix a bike, but we want to make sure that they have the basics in place to make sure that what they're riding is safe, as far as checking the tires and the brakes and the chains and cassettes. So we equip them with all of that information.
So they sign a waiver. And what is expected from a user or from a member?
So they can use our website to actually book a bike. So if you are not a member, when you look at our website, you actually don't see the booking side of things. It's only for folks who have completed the orientation. I give them sort of the secret member way into the website to actually book a bike. And so once they book their bike, they show up on Saturday afternoons. I give them everything they need as far as the bike itself. We give them a lock with a key. If they need a helmet, we give that to them. And then they go on their way and they get to use the bike that Saturday through Thursday in whatever way they want. We got some questions of like, can we take it out of the city? Like, yes, if you can ride far enough to take it out of the city and, you know, you want to do errands in Richfield or St. Louis Park or whatever, like the bike is yours to use and care for. We ask that folks lock up the bike securely. Folks who have garages, we ask them to lock the bike up in their garage. If they don't have a garage, though, they are still welcome to rent our bikes. We just ask that they lock securely somewhere outdoors near their home and keep an eye on it. And then when they return the bike, I ask them to share with me fun stories of the adventures they've been on. And then I also am doing some data collection on how many miles did you ride. With the e-bikes, I'm able to just look at the odometer and get that. But for the non-electric one, I have to ask how many miles. I ask them how many days they used it and then how many trips they went on. And it's just a rough estimate. They don't have to track these numbers super carefully during the rental, but that helps to give us a sense of how impactful the program is being and how much use the bikes are getting.
So you have like the best spreadsheet in the world.
I do. It's very color-coded and organized. I have many spreadsheets now.
So because we're talking about cargo bikes, which are famously not ultra cheap, there are some concerns about like making sure that the bikes go where we want them to go and that they aren't borrowed by people who aren't borrowing and not disappearing. What are kind of like the safety mechanisms in place for that?
Yep. That was a huge consideration and something that we have multiple layers in place for. So first of all, Bike Amend has bike insurance they have insurance on all of the bikes. That helps to cover things. In the orientation that folks are required to take, we walk them through how to lock up a bike, both like where on the bike should you put the lock through and also what should you lock it to and what sorts of situations should you, if you have a choice, favor as far as locking locations versus others. So if folks have a garage, we prefer that they lock in their garage. If they don't have a garage, we talk them through like locking it up in a fenced yard or to something secure. The city, we're lucky to live in a city where there actually is quite a bit of parking available for bikes out in the public right of way, and so walking them through what that might look like. And then we provide everyone with really secure kryptonite locks that they get to take with them with the bike.
This is a follow-up question from podcast producer and host Ian. Do they have access to use the cycle hoop as a storage if they are local?
Not right now, because it is set up with a key. And we were a little bit worried that like if someone rented a bike, because the bikes are not locked inside of the cycle hoop right now because we needed to save some space. There is a way that you can do that. Some of the cycle hoops come with racks, so you lock the bike inside the cycle hoop and then you also close and lock the cycle hoop. But the way ours is set up, they just are free in there, and so we want to make sure that there wouldn't be an accidental situation where a member would not securely lock the cycle hoop and then suddenly all of our bikes are gone. So right now it's locked down. The cycle hoop is actually working on some more development with their hangers, and they will likely have an app in the future that would allow folks to open and close the hanger and probably allow me to be able to see, like, is it open, is it closed? And so that might free up both my time and allow folks to have some more flexibility on where they store the bike and when they access it.
Similar to, like, how I unlock an EV.
Exactly.
Shout out to the EV episode that we've done in the past.
I'm releasing things on a month-by-month basis right now, and if you are not subscribed to our newsletter yet, you should subscribe, especially if you're a member, because things go out to the newsletter first. And the last batch that I opened up the whole month of May. And I opened it up at like 9:30 at night and sent it out via the newsletter. And by the next morning, the entire month was booked.
Whoa.
For those top 3 in-demand bikes. The Bunch Bike and the 2 Aventins were completely booked.
Are you having any repeaters yet?
I'm trying to be careful about not encouraging too much repeats until I want to get everyone a chance, because the worst thing would be for someone to have given up an hour of their time, taken the orientation, than for me to not have space. But if folks have rented one bike and they want to try another, and if I have some flexibility, then yes, I will let folks try a different bike. So we do have one person in May set to try a different bike from the one that they rented in April.
So currently, what has been like your biggest surprise in the first month?
The demand. I wanted to do this project because I thought there was interest, but I worried that it might just be interest from people who are already really bike savvy and just haven't had a chance to try out cargo bikes before. But it actually has been a lot of people in our orientations who are not yet doing a lot of biking for transportation and are curious that this might be their pathway into that. My own pathway was that I got obsessed with just regular bikes first and then came to cargo bikes. And so it's really cool to see how there can be just so many different entry points for folks and how excited folks are to see in a city that has so much infrastructure for biking, how we can increase folks' ability to actually use bikes for transportation.
Right. Like you can do a 15-minute test ride at Perennial, but that's not quite the same as doing a full week of I'm living my regular life with this addition to see if it's something that I want to do permanently.
Yeah. And I know for my own family, when we decided to get a cargo bike, we knew we wanted it, but it still felt like a bit of a jump to say, let's get rid of a car and replace it with a cargo bike before we had a chance to actually figure out how it integrated into our lives. We'd already been biking for transportation with a burly trailer and those sorts of things. So we're pretty confident that we could make it work. But there's some different considerations with cargo bikes as far as where you store them and how you charge them and where you lock them up and all those things. I love Perennial and recommend that anyone who's interested in a cargo bike go there. And also, my family hasn't been able previously to afford the cargo bikes that are at Perennial. And so there are folks who are looking more at the more entry-level, budget-friendly bikes that are closer to $2,000, which Perennial does have a few that are like that now. But when I was looking a few years ago, it pretty much was like $3,000, $4,000 plus, which is a big investment, and not everyone can afford that. And so even for those who can, being able to test it out and integrate it into your life first is huge. And then to give folks access to test ride these more direct-to-consumer bikes that are harder to get test rides on unless you happen to know someone who has the bike that you're interested in and they'll let you, test ride it, I think is a really nice thing just to be able to... My dream is to have as many different types of cargo bikes as possible so that folks have the ability to try all sorts of things.
Yeah. Because, for example, a long tail will probably not support, our current lifestyle for Ian and I. But a bucket bike would more, perhaps.
And you don't know until you try it.
Out.
And it's been interesting. There was one couple in particular who were married and had a kid, and the husband was super interested in the long tail and the wife was super interested in the bunch bike. And I want to get them on both and see, once they actually have them and integrated into their life, what's right for them.
Right.
They all ride so differently from each other. You just don't know how it's going to feel until you get on it.
Right.
And I know when I've taken test rides of bikes, I get so anxious of I don't want to take too much time. And does this fit? And I get in my head of does this actually fit? And I did have one time where I bought a bike that I thought fit me. And then a month later, I was like, this really actually doesn't fit me. And so trying to just help folks with all those things.
So you've had, I don't want to say some big name press recently, but you have had some big name press recently, specifically with friends of the pod, the War on Cars, and got to help co-host a group ride.
Yep.
How was that?
So fun. So I knew Doug and Sarah from the War on Cars were going to be in Minneapolis because Our Streets was bringing them here for their live recording, and I figured they would need bikes while they were here. And Doug and I had been chatting, and I had told him months and months ago that if he ever made his way to Minneapolis, I'd love to show him around. And so it was a perfect combination of factors that they were here, and I had the cargo bike library and was able to reserve 2 bikes for them to use while they were here. And then they gave us a very nice shout out during the actual live show with some photos from our ride. We were able to show them the good, the bad, the ugly of the infrastructure around Minneapolis, and just really fun to be able to get them on the bikes, tell them about the program. They shared it then with everyone who was at the live show, which was hundreds of people. And I actually have already got an email yesterday from an artist who apparently found out about the program, about our cargo bike library from the live show. And they're going to be at Art-A-Whirl, and they want to transport all of their art to Art-A-Whirl. They live in South Minneapolis, but need to get to Art-A-Whirl and want to use a cargo bike to do so. And so I'm trying to figure out if I can squeeze something in between rentals to make that happen.
That is fantastic.
Super fun.
So what is next? What are we looking at from here through the fall?
I am working to get as many systems streamlined as possible, and potentially looking at bringing on some volunteers. I was so excited to start this program and so eager to donate my time that I was like, yes, I will do it all. And then the week after I started sharing about it online and the orientations filled up, and I started doing the math on realizing this is not just going to be every once in a while we have a rental thing. It is going to be the rest of the year for me is being tied to this process of the check-in and check-out and communicating with renters. And so I want to try to bring additional folks in, get my processes, as streamlined as possible so that we can get as many bikes out to people as possible from now until the fall. Continuing to look at the data collection of what is our impact and working to advocate for additional funding to support this. As I mentioned, it's just a pilot program. We only have the funding that we got that mostly paid for bike and men's staff time to help with repairs and their insurance and things. And then the first 2 bikes and the orientations, that funding ends at the end of this year. And so we're hoping that we can get Met Council to step up and give us some more funding, or other folks step in so that we can get more hangars at more locations, fill them with more bikes, get more folks to do what I'm doing and become librarians to help get more bikes out to more people.
So like St. Paul, we're coming for you?
Yes. And North Minneapolis,
Yeah.
I want both of our cities to have these options. And that's the thing too, is like, no one needs to wait for me. This is not a trademarked idea. If there are
Right.
other folks who want to start small versions of this or big versions of this, like, please go forth and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually been something that's been really cool to see online, is how many folks who don't even live in the Twin Cities area seem to have been inspired by just seeing this idea put out there, and are starting to work through how they might be able to do things. And so another thing that, once I have time, I don't have time right now, but my long-term goal would be to put into writing some resources that would support other folks who want to start things like this in their area, so that they can be walked through some of the lessons that I learned from great folks at like Community Pedal Power and other iterations, and just from our version of the program, so that it can set them up to learn from the things that I did right and wrong and lessons learned.
So if folks want to follow this journey, where can they go?
First, go to our website, mplscargobikelibrary.com.
In the show notes.
Second, click subscribe at the bottom to our newsletter. I'm writing the newsletters and they just happen when I have time, but mostly I think I'm going to be doing it like every 2 to 4 weeks. So the newsletters are the best place to get all the updates as quickly as possible. And then we also have a Blue Sky account. Folks are welcome. Bikeamen is sharing about this on other platforms, but I just have the one that I'm picking for now, which is Blue Sky. So feel free to interact with us and share about us on any platforms you use.
When I think about like long-term data collection and also like volunteer folks and social media and making things happen, do you think you could ever foresee this being like a like city planning grad student jumping on?
Yes.
Writing a big old dissertation about this?
Yeah, I actually had someone who doesn't live in Minnesota, who is a researcher, reach out to me on Blue Sky offering to do an actual research study on this. I haven't even had time to talk to Bikeamen about that yet. So it's not something we're doing right this moment. And I do think you should ask Bikeamen about this as well, because I do think they have someone supporting them with research of the larger grant, and have big plans there. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to look at how a program like this is making an impact, especially in a city that has mode shift goals to try to get more trips done by walking, biking, and rolling. I hope that there's a case to be made here. Number one, that this program and programs like this matter. And number two, that we should be funding them so that they can continue beyond just 1 year.
Right. And if you are a listener, say you already have a bunch bike, or you are maybe farther away and this isn't really an opportunity for you yet, folks can donate, right?
They can. We can accept donations through Bikeamen, which is a nonprofit. And so if you are on our website, if you click on the contact button, there's a link under contact for folks to actually make a donation. We accept any dollar amount. It's very easy form there and secure through Bikeamen's donation process, and tax deductible.
And they have some fun shirts too.
Yeah, we do have some merch that Ted at Bikeamen set up for me. There's a t-shirt and a magnet and a sticker. It's very fun.
Do you have any fun stories? You talked about the dogs. You talked about families going on dates. What else? Famously, there's this, carry stuff Olympics in the bike world.
Yep.
What's the wildest thing someone's used the cargo bikes for?
We haven't had, from the rentals that have happened so far, we haven't had gigantic stuff. I think the biggest was the 2 service dogs, who were very large black labs with the biggest puppy dog eyes. So if big counts as puppy dog eyes, then they were the biggest.
Because famously, the couch that we are on right now was taken home via bicycle trailer, just incredible. A flatbed Burley trailer.
Well, and that actually, one other thing that I'm trying to sort through that has been a sort of a surprise with doing this is the number of people who have reached out saying, I have a Work Cycles or a Carla Cargo trailer or a Burley trailer or a cargo bike that I sometimes use but don't use all the time, that they want to be able to have as community resources for other people. There's so many things I would need to figure out about, like, is if I did anything with that, is my role just to connect people to each other and sort of be hands off as far as the liabilities and waivers and all those sorts of things. But I do think this project has it's almost sort of like a mutual aid thing that's reminding folks we can support each other, we can share our resources, and I'm excited to explore all the different ways that we can do that moving forward.
Laura Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
This is so fun. So Erik, you're with Bike MN.
I am.
And when we were talking to Laura, she mentioned that the Cargo Bike Library is a partnership. And so what did that process look like from the Bike MN side?
Sure. So from the Bike MN side, our friend Laura Mitchell, friend of the organization, de facto staff member Laura Mitchell, came to us and came to Andy Lampert, who is the North American CEO of Cycle Hoop, which is a bike parking device manufacturer, and said, hey, I have this idea. Is it something that we can make happen? And it was one that I think that everyone was so excited that other organizations and entities just started piling on and being like, yeah, we can totally make this happen. Like, how are we going to figure out how to make this happen? So Laura came to us kind of with two hopes and dreams, one of which was that, to get these bikes, her original idea, and maybe she went over this, was that she had an acoustic cargo bike that was given to her. And obviously one cargo bike does not a bike library make. And so we had some funding that we had some flexibility with to purchase additional cargo bikes. And we also had insurance that we could kind of lay over it, as well as some of the kind of user waivers related to that. And the initial conversation was really just bare bones, how do we make this work? Who has what of the missing pieces? And we figured out the rest. And so as that partnership developed, it was Cycle Hoop bringing in that the bike hanger, which is the storage device that allows people to kind of come up and use a shared key system to grab the bikes or to drop them off. Bike MN providing the funding, which is funding that we have from the Met Council related to our e-bike commuter assistance program, to actually purchase a lot of these bikes very near or even sometimes below cost. Some of those bikes were donated, so we had more partners coming in the form of, say, bunch bikes, and then the Lyndale Neighborhood Association helping us with what ended up being one of the biggest hurdles, which was how do we store these somewhere that is publicly accessible? We were worried that we were going to have to figure out a way to pull a permit from the city, a permit that does not exist yet, to be able to store this on street. The cargo bike hanger is designed to be stored on street. And the Lyndale Neighborhood Association said, we have a parking spot. It's in the back. We own it. And we'll let you use it for this. So it was really a bunch of partners coming together and saying, I don't have everything to offer to make this whole thing work ourselves, but we all want to make this happen, and here's the piece that we can contribute.
To get a feel for the timeline, when did these conversations start? How long did it take from ideation to opening day?
I can look up the exact date if you want it, but there was a meeting late last year that was, hey, we have this idea, and how can we make it work within our current kind of grant portfolio? And that then kind of became Cycle Hoop saying, hey, we have this spare bike hanger. Those initial conversations with the Lyndale Neighborhood Association, which we had a relationship with, both because Laura Mitchell has a relationship with them, but also because they were one of the organizations that we worked with for the e-bike commuter assistance program. And that was really the last piece that fell in place. And after that, we were able to begin purchasing bikes, figuring out the best way to use just a small amount of funds for that after getting the okay from the Met Council. And the whole shebang launched at the same time that a lot of us were out in DC at the National Bike Summit at the beginning of March. And we did not expect it to be as big as it's ended up being. This has gotten, statewide press. This has had, national level podcasters come and visit. Cleverhood went on a ride that started here with us, along with Doug and Sarah from the War on Cars.
Yeah.
And then they ended up using some of the bikes on the group bike ride that happened while they were in town. So again, it's gotten a little out of scope from what we expected it to be. And we hear the demand for this. And so many people are asking, how can we get one of these in our neighborhood? What does it look like for our organization to have a bike library? And the answer to that is we're figuring it out. The grant funding that we're using for this is a 2-year grant cycle. It's gone really well. The Met Council is really happy with the results. And we're hoping that here in the Twin Cities, that this is really kind of going to be the natural next iteration of this, is how do we shift towards this and provide this amenity in other neighborhoods across the Twin Cities.
So we know that it's a pilot program, which means it's for this traditional cycling season, right?
Yes.
So April through November 1st or so, depending on what our snow is. So what does that mean in terms of what kind of goals are you all hoping to meet so that this can be proven to be worth the grant money?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yeah, it's only happening kind of during those warmer months as we sit recording this right now at the beginning of May, and it's mid 80s outside. So I don't know what that riding season means anymore at this point, but we have only been running this kind of during those warmer months with the partner businesses. And for the Cargo Bike Library, I think that what we're really figuring out is what, all the different pieces of it. So again, this has only been open for a month and a half here. But when we look at the kind of the pieces that we need to figure out over the next few months here, it's how do we actually facilitate in a way that's sustainable, renting these bikes out, getting them back. When there are repairs, how do we get the bikes to the bike shop to have those repairs done? There's a lot of different bike formats that are here, and I think that some of that is sussing out what works best for the different community members who are excited to use this program. And there's a broad variety. If you go onto the website, that's really evident that there's long tails on there, and there's ones that are meant to potentially have passengers in the back, some that are just meant to carry luggage. There's a e-tricycle in there, and so we're kind of looking at what's in demand the most, what are we seeing that get utilized the most, and in what ways. And there's feedback forms for people who are kind of participating in this pilot project. But in terms of kind of what is the threshold that if we cross this, the Met Council gives us more money, I'm not sure on that one. That's a discussion we need to have with them at the end of this year.
So Erik, can I ask about monies?
You sure can ask about money.
So let's start with the cost of the cycle hoop structure.
Yeah, so the one that we used for this, and there's some different models, but the one that we used for this, it runs in the range of $6,000 to $7,000.
And that holds how many bikes?
That holds 2 of these cargo bikes for, I guess, a more traditional bike format. I think it's 4.
Okay. And the bikes themselves, you have the Aventon. That's roughly... Yeah,
so I think that's a good kind of one to look at when as a case study for this. So that there's a long tail Aventon. Aventon. We're not, jury's out on that one, how that one's pronounced. But that those are running $1,600 approximately per unit. We're coming into an era where a lot of these bikes that have a lot of components that are being manufactured in mainland China, we're going to see a lot of cost increases with that, and that's a little bit hard to predict. But when we're talking about installing one of these in the similar format to what we have built out behind the Lindale Neighborhood Association building, we're talking in the realm of probably 10 to 15 per unit, 1,000 to install. And just, again, to contextualize that, let's compare that to a car. Let's compare that to something like EV car share, where it is serving a very similar function. It's for folks who maybe they don't want to own, their household doesn't want to own a personal vehicle, and most of the trips that they're able to, they go on, they're able to accomplish on foot, using transit, using a traditional bicycle. And it's really only when they're doing the big grocery run or they're landscaping the yard that they're looking to have the extra carrying capacity of a cargo bike. So when you contextualize it that way, those EV cars being used by the Hour car system, those are probably running $30,000, $40,000 per unit. So this is pretty good return for replacing those car trips.
From a Bike MN standpoint, what is the biggest surprise so far?
Let's see. The first person who went out with one of these rode it 120 miles in a day. That was a shocker. The amount of press that ran on this, again, like we were out in DC when this happened, experiencing all of the fun that's happening in DC right now, and on top of that, getting all of these like press requests, interview requests. And I was like, I wasn't expecting it to be as big as it was. I was expecting this to be like, the Lyndale neighborhood is really excited to have this amenity, and they're excited to try this out. And what it's really become is, why doesn't St. Paul have one of these? Why doesn't my neighborhood have one? When are you expanding this? And that's, that's great to see. That it's a little bit like the e-bike rebate, where it's like the demand is clearly outpacing, what we're able to meet with this.
Laura mentioned that there are folks who are trying out putting, their dog in it, or taking a trip with their kids in the bike, or people who are using a cargo bike for stuff, for luggage, groceries, lumber, all kinds of things. What do you think, are there any that haven't been used yet? Like, if folks are curious. Yeah, I don't know. What other things do you think people are going to use these bikes for?
Well, for those familiar with the Carry Olympics, I think that really the sky is the limit on this. And I hope that whenever people do utilize these to carry non-traditional objects to be carried on a bicycle, that they do take a photo of that. And hopefully that they're doing it in a way that doesn't damage the bikes themselves. And that's always, I think that's another piece that maybe is worth talking about too, is just like, what does that look like? When the bikes were chosen for the late great Nice Ride system, it's those bikes, for anyone who's like worked on those for as a bike mechanic, you'll know that everything is overbuilt and internalized, and just those bikes were built to be able to sit outside for a decade, and that's exactly what they did. And a lot of the bikes that are currently in there, and this is another kind of piece of this puzzle, is that these are not necessarily designed as bikes that would be as robustly used by as many people as much of the time. And so that's another piece that we're trying to assemble within this puzzle of making this a bigger reality. Bikes become a lot easier to fix when they're all the same. And when they're all the same, they're not likely to be a cargo bike. The people who are comfortable with a long tail are maybe not going to be as comfortable with a front loader. And so we're still trying to figure out, the pros and cons of these different ride formats.
So obviously these are fairly expensive pieces of equipment, and we're also talking about being out on roads and things. So what is the liability insurance, or how do we take care of the people and the bikes themselves?
Yeah. So there's two pieces of that liability. One is for the riders, and then the other is for the actual bikes themselves. And so within the ECAP program, something that we have experienced, which is something that many people with bikes or on bikes have experienced, which is sometimes they get stolen. And that is not necessarily the fault of, the person who is using that bike. One of the challenges with e-bikes or with cargo bikes is that they're a lot harder to bring up into an apartment complex. A lot of people don't have access to good, secure overnight parking facilities. And so with that one, it's a police report. It's an insurance filing, and that we have an insurance policy that relates to that one. And it really sucks when it happens. I think that especially for the people who are excited to use this as a device that's replacing their car trips, it's deflating to have that happen. It really feels like a violation of your space when you have a bike stolen. And I think that's something that people in this room, as we're recording this, have experienced, and a lot of listeners as well. And then for the rider insurance, so everyone who is participating in this is signing a waiver. That waiver, for folks who are curious, I believe it's on the Cargo Bike Library's website. And they also are going through a training program about, these are the differences between this and, the bike that you're maybe used to riding. These are some of the considerations, like stopping. It's a much heavier bike. So, stopping is going to be a bigger consideration. The handling's a little bit different. As you're going around turns, there's a reason that we have a training with it, and that's a lot of that is to make sure that people have the skills needed to be able to have a good time with this and to get what they want to out of it without having to learn how to ride a different kind of bike for that first time.
So Erik, when we come back and chat maybe at the end of the year or kind of do a Bike MN wrap up, can we talk again about the Cargo Bike Library and see how things are going and what the future looks like?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I hope that by that time we have a better idea of kind of what the second era of the e-bike commuter assistance program looks like here in the Twin Cities. And I just add to, this is something that we're running in different places around the state also. So we're getting user data from the experiences of people using, replacing car trips for their work commute or for just, general errands. And I think that that's really interesting to be looking at, again, when you look at the needs of Minnesotans in different corners of our state, and especially how they compare to folks who are here in South Minneapolis.
And by having, years and years of partnerships and conversations in place already, you all were incredibly lucky to have all those partnerships already in place with some of the bike manufacturers, some of the local bike shops, and Cycle Hoop. So a lot of this, for this particular Cargo Bike Library, those costs were way, way less. Yeah,
that's correct. I think that there's a lot of people not only who miss having a real cargo or real bike share program here in the number one bike city in the country, but they also want to see, does this format work in an urbanized context like South Minneapolis? And is this worth, them investing in and exploring in other places? So I think that's like for Cycle Hoop, that's what they're really excited about, is how do we get more of these in more places? And that's going to be hopefully throughout the Twin Cities Metro, but also more places. Because again, what works here is probably going to work in a lot of other cities.
And I think like the biggest takeaway that I've gotten from this conversation with you and and the conversation we had with Laura was that having those conversations and building community and just asking, the worst thing that they could say is, no, we're not going to let you borrow a bike for a year. Or no, we can't offer it to you at cost right now. But by having that community already built, it made this possible.
Absolutely. I sometimes joke, and I think that this comes from the software world of there's no questions that you can come up with that are truly new and novel. Like if you go and search, like, how do I do this? 8 other people have figured out how to do it 7 different ways each. And I think that is true in most contexts outside of software. And I think that this is one of the rare ones that cargo bikes, especially e-cargo bikes, are such a new technology that this is a little bit unexplored. And it's really exciting to get to be at the forefront of being able to explore this with pilot projects like the Minneapolis Cargo Bike Library.
So who knows, maybe other cities in the country or outside the country, hello Canada, maybe we'll see a bike library similar to this, that they learn things from us.
And that's the hope, yeah. And for folks, who are in Canada especially, make those connections. But in other places in the country who might be listening to this podcast, talk to us. Send us an email, info@bikemn.org. You can get in contact with us. And we would love for you to learn from what we've learned. This is not something that is proprietary. We're a nonprofit. We want to see more butts on bikes all throughout Minnesota and far and away past that.
Yeah, Minnesota, the land of zero gatekeepers. Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us.
Always great to be here.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Streets.mn podcast. The show is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Non-Derivative license, so feel free to republish the episode as long as you are not altering it and you are not profiting from it. The music in this episode is by Erik Brandt and the Urban Hillbilly Quartet. This episode was produced and edited by Stina Neel. Congrats on your first audio edit, Stina. And was engineered and transcribed by me, Ian R. Buck. We're always looking to feature new voices on the Streets.mn podcast, so if you have ideas for future episodes, drop us a line at podcast@streets.mn. Streets.mn is a community blog and podcast and relies on contributions from audience members like you. If you can make a one-time or recurring donation, you can find more information about doing so at streets.mn/donate. Find other listeners and discuss this episode on your favorite social media platform using the hashtag StreetsMNPodcast. Until next time, take care.